In Cape. We'll be here for 2 straight weeks. We'll be back here next week. And if you have not decided what you're doing for lunch, swing on by. We've got extra room for you, although we do have a nice crowd here today. In addition to their award-winning jumbo wings here at Wings Etc., they have 70 items on the menu that do not involve wings, including their revamped menu, including their freshly made burgers. They have wraps, subs, quesadillas, entree salads, smoked ribs. Their appetizer lineup includes their ultimate nachos, their deep-fried pickle chips. And if you're coming for lunch, check out their daily half-pound lunch specials. They start at just $7.99. We're watching the big NFL game tonight. The Rams are at the Arizona Cardinals. That has a lot of implications for seeding in the NFC. They'll have it in high definition right here at Wings Etc. Good food, great times, Wings Etc., home of the Coaches Show. We're going to be talking a little bit later with Red Hawks post player Manny Patterson. I don't know what position we would describe him as having, but Coach Brad Korn is here. Would you say he's a post player? Is he a forward, a center? I know they don't label guys centers much anymore, do they?
Yeah, I would definitely say he's a kind of that center, but he obviously shoots free throws well. He's got a little bit of mix of that power forward game. Kind of the dying power forward, if you will. Not everybody's a stretch four, but even in his mind, he thinks he's a stretch four. He would be more in that power forward category than a stretch four.
What is interesting is Manny Patterson, and we'll talk to him and get his thoughts on why all of a sudden he is one of the preeminent free throw shooters in the Ohio Valley Conference. Going into the game on Saturday at Purdue-Fort Wayne, now he finished 1 for 2, so he missed a free throw. He went from number 1 in the league in free throw shooting down to number 3. But how do you explain? I mean, there are 2 games this year where he went into the game the number 1 free throw shooter in the OVC. You have the best free throw shooting team in the league.
Yeah, I think if you even go back to opening night at Missouri State, he was 7 for 7 from the foul line in the second half. So, and had 11 points in the second half. He puts in a lot of time, and he puts in a lot of time. He works on his game. He works on his body. He talks all the time. He's constantly vocal, even though we can't understand what he says half the time. But he puts in the work, so it really doesn't surprise me. He takes his time. If you watch him, he has a very consistent routine at the foul line, and that's very, very key. When you shoot free throws, he's able to calm himself down. And again, because he takes good care of his body and he's in shape, he's not, when he gets to the line, he's not just completely just exhausted and over breathing, and so he's got a good routine, and he every practice, even after practices, he stays and he works on the free throw, and obviously it's paying off for him.
You guys have 4 players in the top 11 in free throw shooting percentage in the conference.
Yeah, it's been a good saving grace for us. Now we obviously, you would say, we'll get there more. So that's something that we've got to figure out. Even in the Fort Wayne game, I thought we fell in love with the 3 a little bit too much when it wasn't dropping, and we talked about it before. Eric with Nigel the other day, we started out 0 for 3, and then he ends up going 4 for 8, getting to the foul line. So we got to be a little bit better at that, and a little bit better of a balance when it's not going to always fall for you that way. And a guy like Eric Reed, for instance, is going to find his way out of it more times than not. But now, if you're not shooting a great percentage, get to the foul line, because as you mentioned, we are a good foul shooting team, and so now that can help you see one go in. One thing that stands out to me in particular, a year ago at Edwardsville, Eric Reed was struggling. He drove, got fouled. He went 1 of 2 from the foul line in that game late, but he saw one go in from the foul line. And you always hear that, get a layup, get a free throw to get yourself going from the outside. And the very next play down the floor, Eric made his first 3 in that game. And so it kind of falls under that mindset, that thought process of make things as easy as possible as you can when things aren't going well.
How important is it for a guy at the free throw line to have the exact same routine, muscle memory? Absolutely, you have to have a routine from the free throw line. Is that what you guys coach?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes guys honestly don't even know or don't have one. At the beginning of the year, it's like, hey, what's your routine? Or it's like, well, I don't really have one, or I do it this way one time and I do it this way. And it's like you have to be very, very consistent because, again, as you mentioned, it's muscle memory, and you're also just slowing yourself down, because a lot of times, obviously, the play just happened or you got fouled at the rim where you're exerting a lot of energy, and then it's a break in the action. So now how can you calm yourself down, take your time, stick to your routine, because now obviously that puts you in a place that just calms everything down, your mental and your breathing.
So when a guy goes to the free throw line, is there something you teach them as far as what they're thinking about at the line? Because some free throws have a lot more pressure attached to it than other free throws.
Yeah, not really. I try to stay out of their way for the most part. Or the other night we didn't shoot free throws well. And so it's just more of just trying to encourage them, hey, stick to your routine, have confidence in what you're doing. I don't really try to talk too much while they're shooting because, again, that's what the practice is for and that's what your routine is for, is to kind of get you into that place to where you're ready to go. And I think sometimes you can kind of I can get into their head if I'm talking to them in between free throws or while they're going through their routine. So it's like I try to stay pretty calm to it and then let them have that confidence in that moment, again, because of the practice and the routine that they've done.
Would you say there's the one spot on the floor or during the game where somebody can get in their head more than any other place is the foul line?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think every guy's a little bit different too. Yeah, there's certain guys that have no problem getting to the line, like DQ Nicholas, for example, is a great free throw shooter. He just goes up there, he does his routine, he doesn't think about anything else. Manning, we talked about. Eric beats himself up a little bit more if he misses one. He wears it on his face and he's mad. And he wants to go shoot another one right away. And opening the game at Fort Wayne, to start the half, he got fouled and he went 1 of 3 from the foul line, and now it wears on him. So each guy's a little bit different. Nate Johnson, you got to tell him to just relax and breathe, because he'll even tell himself, it's like, if I just relax and breathe, I got a good chance of making it. But if you're just so anxious and nervous and tight, then you're probably you're not going to stick to that routine and have the right process to go about it. So each guy's a little bit different.
All right, it was 78-65 Saturday against Purdue Fort Wayne. We'll talk about that game a little bit later. Let's talk about the big win over Evansville, 75-73, a game in which you shot 52% from the field. It seems that's a theme. Your wins over the D1 opponents this year, you shot over 50% against Evansville and Missouri State. You shot 48% in the win over Incarnate Word. So when you're in high 40s and the 50% range, it seems like you're winning.
Yeah, and the ball's moving, and I think that's what makes you obviously hard to guard, is when the ball is moving. And it didn't move as much in the Fort Wayne game, but Evansville, it did. And I think a lot of the times too, the way that we move the basketball, and really not worried or focused on anything else, because 24 hours before the game you find out that you're not going to have Eric Reed and Nate Johnson, and some other guys are dealing with some illnesses, and we've already, Parker's out with an injury, Sam Thompson's out with an injury, so we were a depleted roster.
Taylor.
And Chase Thompson didn't even practice the day before the game because he was feeling ill. So literally you had 7-8 guys at your disposal, and so everybody understood and knew, is like, hey, the only way we're going to have a chance to win this game is to just forget about anything else, and we just have to play. And the ball moved, and Evansville helps that in a way in which the way that they play. But again, I thought we had the right approach to the game, and there were so many times and plays that I remember. One time Nana had a ball on the wing, shot fake, throws to Phil in the corner. Phil shot fakes and drives and gets all the way to the rim for a layup. And we had a lot of uncontested twos at the rim, which obviously help your field goal percentage. If you fall in love with a little bit of the too much of the three, or you're taking bad shots offensively, well, now that's obviously going to bring your percentage down. But then you're not dominating the twos, and we try to talk a lot about dominating twos, get paint touches, finishing around the rim. And when we do those things, and if you go back and watch the games, in those games, we did do those things. And so we got to get a little bit more consistent that way, and I've got to do a better job of getting a little more movement offensively for us when we do get stuck at times, because it does happen.
We're talking about the Evansville game, but I will say about ball movement, I was impressed with Fort Wayne, man. Their ball movement was absolutely excellent.
And that's what they did. They and they dominated twos. Now, they made 9 threes, which was, they didn't, even though they do shoot it well, coming into the game, each individual guy's percentages weren't staggering or jump off the page at you, but they were able to run a little offense, run a little set, and then now they were driving us. And now they were just dominating twos at the rim, and then now they make a couple threes. Now it feels like the whole floor is much bigger than it really is, because they were able to set the tone within their offense and get to the foul line. And we talked about free throws. They're one of the best free throw shooting teams in the country. Yeah,
they're 24th in the nation in free throw shooting. So against Evansville, you go into the game knowing Nate Johnson won't play. Your leading scorer, Eric Reed's not playing. So DQ Nicholas steps into the starting lineup. Do you say something to a Philip Russell or a Chris Harris or a DQ Nicholas, hey, we may need a little more offense out of you tonight to make up for Eric Reed? Because those guys did step up. 24 points, a career high for Philip Russell, and then DQ Nicholas, 17 points. 12 for Chris Harris. Do you mention that, or do you not mention that? It's just, hey, let's just run the offense.
No, it's more of just and you talk about it all the time, just illness and or injury. Unfortunately, that stuff is part of the game, and it's just that you hear it all across sport, just next man up mentality. And so I didn't really bring anything up like, hey, Phil, you have to do extra, or Chris, you have to do more, or this guy has to do more. We just have to play. Everyone just has to raise their level a little bit more all across the board. So a guy like Nigel Russell, for instance, he can set the tone defensively, which he did in that game with 15 rebounds. That is raising the level of your game and our team, and it has nothing to do with necessarily making or missing a three-point shot. And so there's so many other factors that you can do. You can raise your game, and that's why the game of basketball is such a beautiful game. There's so many other things that you can do besides offense that can impact offense and defense and winning ultimately.
And something else that you had highlighted, especially in the tournament in Texas, we've got to cut down on our fouling.
Yeah.
In the Evansville game, just 14 personal fouls. You'd take that every night.
Yeah, you would. And again, their style helped.
Right.
That old saying, styles make fights. And their style of play helped that. But again, they had two very, very good drivers in Gibbons and Newton. And we did an excellent job on those guys. As you mentioned, DQ with a career game. And I really thought it was probably his best 40-minute basketball game he's played since I've been here. Him and Phil were just kind of taking turns of guarding him and wearing him down, and Newton had to be helped off the floor at the end of the game because he was wore out. So we had the right mindset, and those guys did a phenomenal job of defending him without fouling, because those two guys can put a lot of pressure on you, and that's their style. That was Evansville's style, as they space you out. Their 5-man shoots threes or 4 shoots threes. Noah Frederick, he shoots threes, so it's like you have all these guys spaced out shooting threes, and it creates driving angles and gaps for those guys. But we were very disciplined in our gaps and our helps. Our closeouts were good. And they shot 36 or 39 threes it was. 37 threes, and they had 18 assists. And so it's like, if just looking at it on paper, you're like, man, you're probably going to get torched just with the depleted roster. They got 18 assists. They shoot 37 threes. But, again, we made them work for every single thing that they got, and I think it took its toll over the 40-minute game.
And they only went to the free throw line 14 times, but you hold them in the second half to 32% shooting. Now, things have changed since Saturday with the Purdue-Fort Wayne game. They shot a high percentage. But going in to the game Saturday, you were number 2 in the league in field goal percent defense. Now, that has dropped since that game, but in terms of the percentage that the opposing team is shooting, that's been very good. The free throws have kind of, at least in the Texas tournament, that kind of, that's why the scoring defense ranks lower than the field goal percent defense.
Yeah, and we talked about that after the Texas games. I didn't feel that our half-court defense was as bad as the numbers showed. We were giving up a lot of points per game, but as you mentioned, it was because of the free throw line. The foul line we were upside down 20 in some of those games down in Texas. And so obviously we can guard you in the half court. Our guys that pay attention to the scouting reports, we know what's going on, but we can't defend the foul line. And so one of those games in particular in Texas, they were the other team, I forget which one it was, but they were already in the bonus with 14 minutes to go in the second half.
Right. That's a Montana State game.
And so now what do you do as the game goes on? And they had a dominant big man, which obviously you're going to pick up some fouls when teams have a good big. So now it just makes your defense that much harder on the perimeter. So it's all just kind of a combination of everything. So if we can defend without fouling, do a better job of it, or at least teams aren't getting to the bonus that early in the second half, I think you'll continue to see our defense be, again, better in the half court than what maybe some of the numbers might show.
And you out-rebound Evansville 37-31. Of course, a big portion of that is Nigel Russell with a career-high 15 rebounds, but you took control of the glass in that game. That was a big factor. It's a 2-point win.
Yeah, and it's – again, 37 threes, and they didn't shoot a great percentage or a staggering percentage from 3 in that game. So it's long shots, long rebounds, and that has been. We talked about the fouling and letting other teams shoot foul shots. Rebounding was a problem for us early in the season, and so that was a little bit worrisome coming into the game. Can you keep them 2 guys out of the paint? Can you contest the 3? But then now, can you get the rebound? Because if you have to guard them for a full minute, something's going to give.
Right.
And now they shoot 50%. You can't win the game if they're shooting 50%, like Fort Wayne. So we didn't secure those, or we did secure those long rebounds, and it allowed us to get in transition, and it just allowed for much more of an offensive flow for us, and obviously that showed in the numbers as well, offensively for us.
And what was interesting is you could have taken the drama out of it there late, as Philip Russell went to the free throw line. Yeah. That was the only free throw you guys missed in the entire game, and it gave them at least a look. A three-pointer would have beat you, but it skimmed the rim and went off. But it even in a career game, but you only miss 1 free throw in the game.
Yeah, it was obviously huge in 2-point games and close games. You start getting into January, February basketball games, free throw shooting is important. It can win or lose you the game. It's a very simple game, and if you dominate the paint, if you dominate the foul line, rebounds, if you win the assist turnover battle, all those are things that you can control. You can't necessarily control everything else. So if we can really focus on that and continue to shoot the ball well from the foul line, quality shots, and not turn the basketball over, I think we can be in good shape in the Evansville game. We had, I believe it was 3 turnovers at the half. We were 8-3 assist turnover at the half, and then we got a little bit more in the second half. Fort Wayne, we ended up with 12, I think it was. I forget whether it was at halftime or at the end of the game, 12 at the end of the game. A lot of those were offensive fouls. So I thought we've done a pretty good job of taking care of the basketball and not being loose with it. So again, the more you can dominate those simple things, especially as we get into January and February basketball, that's going to be very important.
SEMO's all-time winningest basketball coach, Ron Shumate, used to say, free throws don't win all the games, but they win all the close games.
That's right. And you get those opportunities, especially the one-on-one free throw. To me, that's a huge thing, because if you miss the front end of a 1-1, it's essentially a turnover.
Right.
And if now you've done you've executed a play perfectly and you've got what you want, but now they foul you before you get to the shot, and it's a 1-on-1 and you miss the front end, you just turn the basketball over essentially. So you can add those. I know everyone gets into the deep analytics, but to me that's one that's very important. We talk about the hockey assist. If I pass it to you, you pass it to him, and it's the right play, you both should get an assist. I think the bonus free throw front end miss is a big statistic that can really change momentum a lot in games.
It's interesting because a few years ago, the women's game did away with the 1-on-1. When they went to 4 quarters, it's 5 fouls per quarter. Every time to the free throw line, it's 2 shots. No more 1-on-1. What do you think about that?
I think it's interesting. Kind of goes back to the hack-a-shack from a decade ago or whatever it was, if that was right or wrong. And to me, if you're going to – it's the game. It's part of basketball. It's a free throw. So it's to me, you got to step up and make them. I get that you can't maybe you shouldn't reward the defense if they foul you and you miss a first free throw. You should get the opportunity for the second one because it's a defensive fault that they fouled you.
Right.
So I get both sides of it, but again, to me, it's more of it's a skill thing too, and the basketball is supposed to be a skill type of a play game. So I can see both sides of it, quite honestly, because again, the defense should be punished for their foul. So I don't. It's interesting. I don't know how that would go in the.
I wonder if
game.
the game would ever trend to that, because I think the idea
it would increase scoring, which is what they want anyway.
Right.
So I could see that part.
I think when they did it, they were making it more like the international rules of basketball, international basketball. So I don't know that they're going to tinker with it on the men's side, but I thought it was interesting when the women did it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then the quarters. I actually thought that we would have gone on the men's side would have gone to quarters a little bit, since they're always trying to mimic the NBA and Euro and all that type of stuff. So I was surprised by that, but I guess if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yep. All right, the Purdue-Fort Wayne game going into the season. I don't think the average person pays attention to Purdue-Fort Wayne. I mean, now they've upset Indiana a couple of times over the last several years, so they were on the national map when they knocked off the Hoosiers, who were ranked, by the way, when they beat them a couple of years ago. But last year, they were 4th in the nation in field goal percentage and 4th in the nation in three-point field goal percentage. I mean, this was a team with a lot of shooting skill, and they really shot the ball well on Saturday.
They did, and they, as we mentioned at the beginning, they do a good job of running their stuff. They get positioned where they're supposed to be in the half court. Simple couple little actions, get some fluff going just to take some time off the clock, and then now they got you when you're a little bit tired defensively, and they attack. And they were on attack mode. They just got beat by 20 on the road. The other thing about that roster is, if I'm not mistaken, 4 of their 5 starters are fifth-year guys, and then their 5th starter is a 4-year guy. So they start all seniors. And 4
of their 5 starters are D1 transfers.
Yeah, so they're very, very mature, experienced. So that was why it was a little bit surprising that the record is what it is at this point in the season, because they're a better team than their record. So whatever, you never know what's going on, just like us and them, and maybe they had injuries or illnesses or whatnot. But they had a decent year last year, and then they brought all those guys back. Coach Kaufman does a good job defensively, very, very aggressive and physical. But they had really good wing playmaking guys in Pipkins and Godfrey, and we did not contain their aggressive drives to the basket as well as I thought we were going to be able to, given what we did against Givens and Newton in Evansville the game before.
Yeah, it was a career game for Jalen Pipkins. Those 24 points, a career high. He goes 10 of 14 from the field, and he was just able to get to any spot on the floor, and when he pulled up, he was making it.
Yeah, he had 2 beautiful pull-ups that actually were well defended and contested. he had one baseline layup where he came with his right hand and scooped it up underneath. It just touched nothing but the bottom of that. It went up about 12 feet and just dropped straight in. So it was kind of one of those nights for him, unfortunately for us. But we didn't do a good enough job containing the other guys either. There's always going to be that guy that pops up from another team in every type of a game. But we just didn't do a good enough job consistently throughout that game. And only a 6-point game at half, and we didn't play great. But once we finally got our footing and understood where the game and how the game was going to go, I thought we were in a good place. But then the second half, those first 10 minutes, we really didn't have the right team defensive rotations and quickness and attentiveness that we did against Evansville.
What I thought was interesting is in the first 8 minutes of the game, they played 11 players. They rotated in 11 players in the first 8 minutes of the basketball game. You don't see that a whole lot.
Yeah, and a lot of them were their 5 men. We'll talk about Manny will be coming up here in a little bit, but at least 3, if not 4, of those guys were at the 5 or that center position. So they were keeping those guys fresh. Their big kid actually he'd averaged 4 offensive rebounds a game coming in. So I don't know if it was part of their game plan to just
he's one of the best offensive rebounders in the country.
Yeah,
I think he was 12th.
Yeah, so it just was. I don't know if it was that mindset of just we'll keep him fresh, keep him out of fouls, get him back in there. They won't know what's going on. But he rotated those 5 men in quite a bit, because if you look at their minutes from those other guys, Godfrey and Pipkins, those guys play 35, 33 minutes a game. So there wasn't a whole lot of rotation with that. But again, I don't know if he was just trying to find, and their 6 man was their 3rd leading scorer. And so it just was. He's
the only guy in the Horizon League averaging double digits who is not a starting player. Billupson. He's one of the. Well, he leads their conference and made 3-pointers.
And we actually thought that he was going to start in that game instead of number 10. I forget his name off the top of my head. But we thought he was going to.
JoJo Peterson.
And Peterson hit some threes, on us. And so just they kind of had some things. They kind of cracked the code a little bit on our defense, had us a little bit out of kilter, a little bit out of rotation. We were a little bit late, long closeouts, and they were just able to drive and get too many easy twos for us to sustain it.
And you look at the way that they defended you weren't able to get to the rim as easily against Fort Wayne as you were against Evansville. What did they do defensively that frustrated you?
They were way more physical than Evansville, and that's like I said before, styles kind of make fights, and they're way more physical. They jumped us a lot, kept us on the side a little bit more than Evansville did. Evansville even tried to go late in the game. They switched up their coverage. They went to a hard hedge where the big man jumps out on the screen and tries to make you go around. But Fort Wayne, they did a little bit more. If you're right-handed or left-handed, force you to your weak hand, box you in, cup you in with their post player to not let you get into the paint. So obviously like a guy like Philip Russell, that makes the game harder for him. And it was so much easier against Evansville because they weren't doing that. They weren't switching any ball screens. And then anything on the wings, we call it an ice, where you jump so if you're on the right wing, they jump your left hand, force you to your right hand, force you back down to the baseline side. And so if you don't have any weak side cutting action, which we didn't have at the very beginning of the game, or we figured it out a little bit later as it went on, it was an interesting game there from the standpoint of the lane was wide open for cuts initially with passing and movement and screening, but then once you drove in there, they would converge. So it was really of a blend of 2 kind of different defenses, and if you don't understand at the beginning of how and why, then you're going to be a little bit stagnant. We got a little bit too stagnant at the beginning of the game, and even in moments, not just at the beginning, but even in moments as the game went on, and you get a little bit tired, you don't move as much offensively, and that really helped them defensively because they were very, very engaged for us. And then we've got to get a little bit more we've got to do a better job of getting a little bit more movement to get to the action that we want instead of just going straight to the action.
So do you anticipate maybe some future opponents breaking down this film and say, hey, Fort Wayne had success doing this, maybe we're going to do a little bit of that, and then you, in the chess game, have to make an adjustment in case teams do defend you like Fort Wayne?
Yeah, we were just talking about it before I came over here as a staff. SIU, for instance, obviously our next opponent, a year ago they did a lot of the icing or keeping you on the side. They haven't shown as much of it this year on film, but I can definitely see them doing more of that on Wednesday night because of that film.
And when you look at what went right for you in the game, Philip Russell, 17 points. He only shot 3 3-pointers. You were 5 for 20 from 3. But Russell statistically is the 3rd best 3-point shooter in the Ohio Valley Conference. Now, Eric Reed has more volume threes than Philip Russell, so he's among the league leaders in made threes. But in terms of percentage, Philip Russell is right up there among the elite shooters in the OVC. Might Philip Russell get a few more looks from three? Do you want him to shoot more from three, or are you satisfied with where he's at now?
I think he takes good three. The hard thing with Philip is that he has the ball in his hands a lot of the times. And so he's either getting to the rim when he's dribbling or he's creating for others. So there's not a lot of pull-up threes because it's not that great of a shot in basketball anyway.
Gotcha.
So, but I think you can see some of that now when we talked about it last time, Eric, when him and DQ play together. Now DQ can handle some of those point guard responsibilities. Philip can play a little bit of that two guard, if you will, and now he can be a catch-and-shoot guy more within the offense that way too. So I think he's taking good shots. It's a lot like Eric Reed a year ago. Everyone said, oh, he's shooting 45%. Get him more threes, get him more threes. Well, if he doesn't take the right threes, that 45 goes down to 36. Then you're not saying shoot more threes, shoot more threes, shoot more threes. So as long as you're taking a good percentage of shots, and they're good shots, I think his percentage will stay up because he can't shoot the basketball. So it's a little bit of that. And then too, when you've got it going, sometimes you just got to let it go a little bit more. And I think you saw that. I believe before the Webster game, if I'm not mistaken, he was almost 50% from the 3-point line.
Right.
So it's just when you're shooting that high of a clip, you're taking good shots, but now within the offense, we find him a few more here and there, and I think a guy like DQ can help him with that. Eric Reed, Chris can, it doesn't have to just be Phil with the ball in his hands all the time.
They didn't win the rebounding battle by a wide margin, 29-25, but they looked on paper maybe to be vulnerable on the glass. They were a -3 going in, and then you find out your leading rebounder, Nigel Russell, who just had 15 rebounds against Evansville. All of a sudden you don't have him. That had to affect things, especially in that department and on the defensive end because he's an excellent defender.
Yeah, and it's like I said before, styles make fights. That's a good game for Nigel. Just the way that they play, the physicality of it, he can handle that. He can get rebounds and then push in transition because I thought we could have got more transition baskets on them because they're not a great rebounding team. But offensively and defensively, Nigel does a good job of crashing the glass, and you got to account for that. So now when we're not shooting it well, Nigel comes in. If he can get you 3-4 offensive rebounds, when now you offset, and now maybe someone like Philip Russell sticks a couple more threes or whatever the case may be. So he obviously can impact the game with his rebounding. He's such an important part of the game. But then also too defensively, just the physical nature of it, the following of the scouting report, knowing what's going on. He is one of those, what they had in the older guys, the fifth year, that been around the block, been in a bunch of games. He's kind of that guy for us too. He's been here and seen so many games here throughout his SEMO career that. And then he'd been playing so well. He's played well all season, really. Now to not have that, it just takes your depth away, and especially at a position like that, or a statistic or a skill like rebounding, that really does hurt you. Now everybody's got to play a little bit better and above, because quite honestly, Chris did rebound well in that game. I think he had 6, if I'm not mistaken. But Eric Reed doesn't rebound a ton. From the guard spot, DQ does, but he didn't get many. But again, they shot such a good percentage from 2 that there weren't a lot of rebounds. Yeah, exactly.
To get. And boy, that's the best performance by Dylan Branson. He'd been scuffling, coach, and he scored 8 points, and he scored them in the span of about 90 seconds toward the end of the first half. All of a sudden, Dylan Branson was the guy, 8 straight points.
Yeah, it was huge. It was good for him. You saw him pump his fist, and none of these guys want to go through a slump, but it happens every year. We talked about guys going through slumps last year, and everyone goes through them at different times. And so, do you have the perseverance? Do you get in the gym? Do you understand why you're missing shots, or are you taking the right kind of shots? Are you passing up shots that you could take because there's no more open than open? And so, as long as you've put in the work and you're open, we tell our guys you got to shoot that shot. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong with making extra passes. That's what we want within our offense. But now when the ball is done what it's supposed to do, and we've run what we're supposed to run and you're open, you have to shoot that shot. Because everyone else, the other 4 guys on the court, are expecting you to shoot it. And so now when you don't and I pass it to you and you thought I was going to shoot it, well, now I'm not. You're not ready to make a play because you thought I was going to shoot the basketball. And so now your offense can get bogged down. So it was good to see him see the ball go in the hole. We need it. Now if we can get Nana going too, and he's struggling and he's in a little bit of slump. He had good shots against Fort Wayne. Yep. He didn't, maybe one bad one, but he was 0 for 6, but he took 5 really good shots, and it's just a matter of he just got to see one go in. He comes before practice and puts in some time, and he's struggling. We got to get him feeling good about himself, and I think as long as he sees one go in, hopefully he sees a couple go in on Wednesday night, because he can give us that energy and that rebound that we missed from Nigel. He can give us that same thing.
Yeah, with Dylan Branson, I think he was 0 for 10 from 3 going into the game, and then bang, bang, he hits a couple of threes. There was one play, though, it happens quick, and I'm sure you've gone back and watched the film. He gets a pass down right near the basket.
He's wide open.
I mean, he's wide open for the shot, and he didn't even look. He just fired it out to the perimeter, and to me, that's a sign of a guy who, not having confidence with his shot going in.
Yeah, and he's done that a lot. He did it a bunch last year. He's done it a lot this year. That's the blessing and the curse of Dylan. So I believe it was Nana was in the corner. He was wide open, and Chris threw it to Dylan when he cut. And so in Dylan's mind, he's like, well, Nana was just wide open, so let me throw it to Nana because I know he's still wide open. And then he doesn't even realize that he was the one wide open at the rim, and you have to take those shots.
Right.
Like, you have to shoot that shot. But, again, it does creep in the back of your mind. I was like, I know I'm struggling a little bit. Let me get it to my teammate that I feel can make this shot. But, again, in that particular play, I think we did throw it to Nana. Now we get, he literally was wide open at the basket, and now you're taking a contested three. So instead of shooting 100%, you just shot 0%. And then the compound of that is now if you come down your next 2 possessions and don't score, you've got to go one of your next 2 possessions for 50% to shoot 33%. And so when you don't take those layup opportunities, it really puts a strain on your following possessions.
So in the game, 12 turnovers for you. You had to like the fact that you limited the turnovers.
And I think at least, I know 3 for sure, it might have been 4 or 5 were from illegal screens, and so it's just we took care of the ball from a guard passing standpoint, which was good to see.
There was one stretch there in the second half. 5 fouls called against you consecutively. I mean, nothing for Fort Wayne. It was just like every whistle there for a stretch was against you guys. And I know Eric Reed got fired up one time and ended up getting a technical foul. What transpired there? I know you got a couple of technicals.
Yeah, that was he got his was what they call a contact technical. So there was a scrum on the floor
on
that loose ball. It was a 7-point game. We have possession, and then he kind of pushed and nudged the guy. So when they went back and reviewed it on video, it was a technical. And unfortunately, in that situation, a contact technical is now 2 free throws for them, and they get the ball. So we, again, on the road, it was a 6-point game at half. He had just got fouled. And we mentioned it before to start the second half, and he went 1 of 3 from the foul line. So now he's frustrated because he just missed the game. And so now your legs aren't quite there. Your lungs aren't quite there because he was sick and everything else. So now he's frustrated. He picks up a tech. But now they get 2 free throws. We mentioned it. They're one of the best free throw shooting teams in the country. That goes from 7 to 9. Coming out of that, they steal the possession. So they get the possession back. You either go a 2 or a 3. You're now down 11, 12 points, and just like that. Just like that. And then I got one, and I didn't even know why or how, and I just kept asking the guy what I got it for. I didn't use any type of language, but he, for whatever reasons, I guess it is what it is.
Well, one of those games that it was really frustrating to watch it, but at the same time, the fouls in the game, 20 called on you, but late in the game you were fouling.
Yeah.
I mean, you were trying to get them to the free throw line. That was your only option at that point.
And some of our fouls, even we talked about it in Texas, you could probably take that was where it was really, really glaring, were the fouls in the MTE at Incarnate Word. But again, in the Portland game, even in the Montana State game a little bit, you can probably take away about 14 to 16 free throw attempts because we were fouling at the end of the game trying to get, steal some possessions back. But still fouled too much down there, but we did in Fort Wayne, but it wasn't as bad as some of the numbers may show.
Yeah, and the ball handling wasn't bad. And you talk about 12 turnovers, but they're offensive fouls.
Yeah.
Those go down as turnovers on a stat sheet.
Right. And I know, and it might as well, Eric Reed, 1 of 3 from the foul line. We didn't shoot free throws well compared to what we had done leading up to the game. So, again, missing layups like Dylan Branson had that layup we talked about wide open in the paint. Manny actually had a layup in the paint. So if you miss on those types of opportunities against a defense that's like that, and when the offense isn't really going, you have to capitalize on those small things, layups, free throws. And we didn't capitalize enough or give us enough of a chance to be able to sustain it or have it in that 1, 2, 3 possession game as the game went on late in the second half to where you make a little run, now you're right there where you need to be.
All right, we're going to be talking with Manny Patterson here. Give us a good Manny story or two.
As I mentioned before, he's always talking and he's always asking questions. And it's now the guys now understand everything too, because we'll say, okay, hey, tomorrow practice at 2:30, and then he'll be like, Coach, what about ways? And he'll like ask 13 questions right after that as I'm still talking, and then the guys have now gotten to the point where like, Manny, just shut up and listen. He's about to tell you what we're going to do. And he's even caught himself a few times. Like he'll start to say, and they'll be like, my bad, coach. But he's Manny's a great kid. I told him the other day he's going to make some employer very, very happy. He's going to make society better. He's going to be a great dad, great husband, just because he has that fabric and that character that you want in a young man. And he's going to continue to work this year. He'll continue to be a guy that can give us a great lift. He's a great kid, great teammate. And, again, like I said, he's just going to be a great person and representative of SEMO men's basketball.
All right. We're going to talk with Manny Patterson when we come back. We'll take a timeout. Red Hawks playing at SIU on Wednesday against the Salukis, and we'll talk more about that with Coach Korn a little bit later on. But Manny Patterson joins us after the break, the Red Hawks Coaches Show from Wings Etc. on SEMO ESPN. In Cape, hey, did you know that you can get Wings Etc. delivered right to your front door? That's right. They are offering delivery now through DoorDash. So if you don't have the DoorDash app, go get the DoorDash app. Create an account. Just takes you a couple of minutes, and then you can order Wings Etc. right to your door. You can also order online, and, of course, you can call ahead if you want to come in and pick it up, or better yet, just come in and dine with us. They have over 70 items on the menu that are not wings, and that includes their brand new burger lineup. They have a brand new mushroom and Swiss burger. You really should check that out. Their portobello mushrooms, that is a new menu item as well. In addition to the new burger lineup and all of the wings, they have wraps, salads, and other favorites. And again, you can have it delivered through the DoorDash app. Let's welcome in Manny Patterson to the show. Now, you are from Chicago.
Yes, I am.
But you played 3 years at Green Bay, and I was asking you about being whether you were a Bears fan or not. You're just not a big football guy, right?
Right. So I watch football maybe a few times when it's on, but I don't watch it as often, but when I do get a chance, I will have it on and just catch a few games when I can.
How crazy are they for the Packers in Green Bay? I mean, you were there for 3 years, right?
Yeah. So it's surprising that I actually never been to a Packers game, but I went to school in Green Bay, and just like the atmosphere and just like tailgating, it was just crazy. It was like so packed. The streets were blocked off, and just like everyone was just excited to be at a Packers game, literally.
All right. When people see a hard winter down here in southeast Missouri, they have no idea what a hard winter is in Chicago. Compare and contrast winter in Chicago and winter in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Are they similar?
Okay, so I remember my freshman year at Green Bay, it was like the worst, biggest winter storm they probably ever had. And so we had practice that day too, probably about like in the afternoon, early afternoon. And next thing you know, we just get a good 6 to 12 inches of snow. And so it was no way I get to my car. Like every car was probably like full up with snow, and just like we could not even have practice. So we had to cancel practice that day. We couldn't even leave our like rooms, dorms, anything that day. And so one day in Chicago, I had where it's like it just becomes like very cold in Chicago and just windy. And honestly, you have like some tough winter storms, but people do fight through them. So I'd say it's probably just like very windy and kind of cool in Chicago, but it's more snow, and like you get more frostbite in Wisconsin.
In Green Bay.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing, it can be cold if there's no wind. It's
No,
not as
literally.
bad, but there's a reason they call Chicago the Windy City.
Yeah, very much so.
All right, so what was it like growing up in Chicago?
Growing up in Chicago, honestly, I would say like everyone grinded for a lot of things that they wanted, and just like it's tough because like you come from a grit and just hardworking area where everyone's just like fighting for what they really want, and so for where you want to be in life, it's just like takes a lot of hard work. Come from Chicago, and just everyone is just like fighting for that next spot, and just like just really working hard towards like their goals, aspirations, and what they really want to do for their end goal.
It is a big sports city. Did you play any other sport other than basketball growing up?
I played football for 3 years, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I did softball probably for about like a few months.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it in
All right.
basketball.
You a Chicago Bulls fan?
I actually have been following the Bulls quite a while now for this year, because they picked up some couple good picks, and they have a pretty good team this year. So I actually been keeping up with them this year.
Yeah, I was in college when Michael Jordan was playing for the Bulls. I was a Bulls fan back in the days of Reggie Theus and Artis Gilmore. That was a long time ago. But when they drafted Jordan, we didn't have any idea he was going to be a guy like that. I mean, he is still a legend up there, right? I mean, you probably can't go anywhere and not see a Michael Jordan picture somewhere.
No, literally though, like that's my GOAT. A lot of people have like LeBron as their GOAT, but Michael Jordan, he's definitely at the top of the list for me. And him, like, just bringing those championships to Chicago, and just like what we needed was very great, and just very well needed, honestly.
Now you said you are not a big football guy, but you also told me you did watch the Packers and Bears game last night.
Yeah, I did. And
Did you have a rooting interest? Were you rooting for either one of them?
I was rooting for the Bears, of course, but they was there, but they just gave the game up at the last, in the last few minutes of the fourth quarter. But it was a pretty good game going into the second half. But
they were up by 10. I thought, whoa, they might pull an upset here.
They were. I thought they were like going to come away with it, but I mean, we always live to fight another day, so they didn't get it that time.
Manny Patterson joining us here on the Red Hawks Coaches Show. Have you always been the biggest guy in your class? Growing up, were you always the biggest, tallest?
When I got to about my sophomore year, of high school, that's when I then had people at my height level. But ever since then, yeah, I was kind of the biggest and tallest. So yeah, it was pretty like normal for me to be the tallest person in my class. Yeah.
So you're listed at 6'8". Are you really 6'8"?
I'm 6'8".
Because I know how rosters go. I mean, you may be 6'8". I'm just curious.
I'm 6'8" with shoes and on the court, but in general, I'm really like 6'6.5".
Okay.
That's my actual height.
Well, the bottom line is you're not playing in bare feet. You're wearing shoes. So
Right.
if you're 6'8" in shoes. So growing up, were you always the first guy chosen when you pick up basketball?
Yeah, pretty much because, when you play basketball, you obviously going to think you want the biggest person on the court and, like, that's going to be the biggest advantage for you. So, yeah, I was pretty much picked up a lot, like most of the times just on, like, pickup games, like 5-on-5 games when we had back at home and we used to play, like, outside on the court. They was like, oh, yeah, I want the big, tall guy. Let me get him. So, yeah.
Is there now? I know in New York they've got some famous basketball courts where a lot of pickup basketball. Where's the big spot in Chicago? Are there a couple of places where if you want to really play high level pickup basketball, this is the place to go?
Actually, you have Harold Washington Park. That's where I went a lot of times when I was younger. Just like growing up after school, I'll go there and just like it'd be pretty rough, but I play with like some of the older guys and just get some of that good basketball in and just like play outside and just have that fun. But it was always definitely competitive though, for sure.
So when you decided you were going to leave Green Bay, what were your options, and how did you get affiliated with SEMO?
So the options were like James Madison University. It was Southeast Missouri State, NKU, North Kentucky,
Right.
And it was one more school I forgot, but actually Coach Sam was the first person to recruit me from SEMO. He actually DM'd me on Twitter, and then Coach Pickens actually gave me a call that day, like the next day, and we talked about how my recruiting going, just like where can I see myself as far as on the court and everything else, but the conversation continued with Coach Pickens, and then we just like had a few phone calls after that, and it graduated to Coach Korn.
Okay.
And so that's when I started talking to Coach Korn, and we started just conversating about everything, like what I wanted and just what we were looking for, and so then that's when I really narrowed down my list, and I committed to SEMO.
And did you take an actual visit here before you decided to say that you were going to come?
Actually, during that time, it was during COVID.
That's
so
what I was wondering, if you weren't able to take a visit.
Yeah,
That's got to be odd, though, right?
It was because as a recruit, you want to see how the campus is and where you're going to be going for school, and so it was pretty tough. But Coach Korn, he definitely set the tone for myself, as far as like what I wanted, and I definitely trusted his word, and so that definitely made me commit to SEMO.
Have you ever played for a coach who is taller than you?
No, Coach Korn is definitely the first, for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of odd to be. Everybody usually looking up at you, or you're looking down on them, and you actually are eye to eye, or have to look up a little bit when you're in the huddle.
I definitely thought at first he was about like 6'7". I didn't know he was about 6'9". It definitely caught me off guard when I first saw him. I'm like, oh, he's definitely taller than me, but
I saw him play, and your game is definitely different than his.
Yeah, I actually saw what they had on Coach Korn today, because he played at SIUC.
Right.
And so he actually shot the three ball a lot more than me. And he made like 78 career threes on, himself. So I'm like, oh, that's pretty tough. But like the growth he made between like the years he played at SIUC was actually that's pretty like nice, because, for a lot of guys, like, making that jump, it does become hard, but he obviously put in the work and just like made that jump, and he wanted it, so he set the tone for himself.
This free throw shooting of yours, man, I mean, you went into the game on Saturday the number one free throw shooter in the OVC. I think right now you are number 3 in the league. Let me double check it here. Number 3 in the OVC in free throw shooting percentage. 82%. So you're 23 out of 28. And normally, not always, but normally post players are not over 80% shooting free throws. How did that happen?
Honestly, I started to take my time a little bit more this year on the free throw line because I did rush a few last year, and just like I obviously know I can shoot the ball, mid-range wise pretty good, and just taking my time with the free throw line was really big for me, and just like having that confidence when I step up to the line, just knock these down, just taking a deep breath. So now it's just like I set a goal. I wanted to shoot above 80% this year. So yeah.
So far, so good.
Yeah, it's going pretty well.
How many free throws do you get up a day, and how many shots do you get up a day? And I know you're not a guy that stands out and takes the long-distance shots. I've seen you, working out there on the floor, and you're working around the basket because that's where everything happens for you, around the basket.
Yeah, so honestly, like this year, I come a lot before practice in the morning. I get up about 8 or 9 in the morning. I come and just, come to the gym for about like 30, 40 minutes and get some like touch stuff around the rim and just a couple finishes and like, mid-range jumpers and free throws. Just before practice and after practice, I shoot a lot of free throws, and then that's what I end my day because I usually like to give myself and my body a rest because I'm just going most days before practice. And so I usually need my legs to rest because I have had, a couple of injuries during this past summer, which was like, kind of tough.
Does anybody talk more than you on the roster?
Philip Russell.
Okay.
Philip Russell, that was without a doubt. I can answer that because he's a funny guy. Like, we love him for sure. And he's just like, he has that pure heart and that love for the game. And so he just has that urge and energy that we always need. So, yeah, definitely Philip Russell.
And he just appears to me to be one of those guys that will get under the skin of opponents.
He will. He definitely will because he definitely got under my skin a couple practices. And just like, for myself, I say he always needs the audience. So, like, that's what he feeds off of. And so, we had a couple battles in practice and just, we exchanged a couple words. But it's always great competition and great competitiveness, so we need it for sure.
I'm sure you know that it is a rivalry with SIU. It's not a conference game, but, the two schools are about 45 minutes apart, and bragging rights are on the line. So this is an important game on Wednesday.
It's definitely going to be a big game on the line, but as long as we come to play, we play SEMO basketball, we play together, and we do what we're supposed to do. As a unit, we definitely will come out with the outcome that we want.
All right. It'll be Wednesday, 7 o'clock, inside Banterra Center in Carbondale. We will see you there.
Yes, sir.
Thanks so much, Manny. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Manny Patterson, our guest here on the Coaches Show. One more thought with Coach Korn when we come back. Talk about his alma mater, the SIU Salukis. You're listening to the Red Hawks Coaches Show from Wings Etc. on SEMO ESPN. Here with Coach Brad Korn just ahead of the game with SIU. And Jeff Hansa gives us this little nugget, Coach. If the Redhawks win Wednesday, they will go undefeated against the Missouri Valley Conference in a season for only the second time in the Division I era. SEMO last beat SIU and Missouri State by a combined 5 points at home during the 2001 season. During the Brad Korn era was the last time it happened.
Yeah, I don't even know how to respond to that. I guess hopefully I can keep a streak going for the positive of SEMO, that is, obviously.
And I remember that game. That was the first SEMO game I ever did against SIU. All right, one thing we see with the Salukis here, Coach, they're 5-4. Man, every game they play is close. They have a 3-point loss to Little Rock. They beat Colorado by 4. They lose to Creighton by 2. They defeat Alcorn State by 3. They beat Evansville by 2. And they just lost at Tulsa Saturday by 4. I mean, those are close basketball games.
Yeah, they've been in some battles. Obviously, I keep an eye on them, and having played there and knowing Brian very well, they've been in. They've never really gotten away from anybody. They got the final score against Austin Peay. They got away from them a little bit at home, but every other game has been close throughout the game. So I'm looking forward to it. I think our guys will be looking forward and up for the challenge. Other than the Fort Wayne game, we played pretty well on the road against Fort Wayne. We actually had a opportunity to go 3-0 for the first time in our Division I era. Started a season off 3-0 on the road. So we've still got a couple of those firsts they're coming around. So I know our guys will be ready to go. It'll be a great environment, as it always is. A great fan base over there. So we're looking forward to the challenge.
They're coming off the loss to Tulsa where they shot 40% from the field, and they hit 15 three-pointers in that game, Coach.
Yeah, Tulsa Coach Haith, they run a matchup zone basically the entire game, and they've got a couple different looks to it to keep you off balance, and they constantly just fly around. It's very similar to what would be a man-to-man switching 5 ways type of a defense. So you get corner threes in that game. We played them 3 times, 3 years in a row when I was at Kansas State. And so I just know that it's a tough game to play offensively because of the style that they play defensively. But they do allow and do bait you into taking a lot of threes because, again, the style that they play. And they follow cutters through in the zone. And so now on ball reversals, there's a lot of three-pointers available to you. And when they're shooting the 3-ball well, much like all of us are, they're tough to beat.
The game went into overtime last year with SIU, 87-79. They win it in overtime. What stands out when you look back at the meeting last year with the Salukis?
Obviously the free throw. We seem to talk we spend our time on is talking about free throws. But
it was 28-11. They outscored you from the line.
Yeah, and we had done a really good job on Damask, their best player, in the first half, and then he kind of got loose a little bit on the second half. I think he had 13 or 12 points from the foul line, or 11 in our game a year ago. So we got to do a good job of containing him. Again, you can't. It's hard enough as it is because he's a very good player, but you can't allow him to be getting 10 to 12 points from the foul line. And if that happens, the game's going to be very easy for him and drawing fouls. He does a good job of drawing contact, but we've got to keep him off the foul line as much as possible. But that stood out to me, and then especially late. The foul that we had at the end of the game where they got 2 free throws, 2 sent it into overtime. And Chris Harris had a shot very similar to the one he had against Incarnate Word at the end of that game. Obviously, it didn't go in, and we go to overtime. But I didn't think that we were ready yet at that point in our season and in our program to win that game in overtime. And then, obviously, we made progress a year ago. And then this year, we've been in some close games as well and been able to finish those off. So, really looking forward to that challenge. Again, they brought back most of their roster. We bring back most of our roster, so it should be good. Actually, Brian gets the coach this time, so
that's right. He was
sick.
They're only 65% from the free throw line. That's a hole in their resume right now.
Yeah, that surprises me a little bit. They got a couple guys that knock on wood, but on paper, the 3-ball you would think would be a higher percentage, given the volume in which they shoot them. So it'll be interesting because sometimes you can't put too much into percentage and say, well, this guy can't shoot, so we're not going to guard him. And then he goes out there and goes 3 for 3 from 3.
Right.
So you can't really play too much into it. Obviously, it goes into a count of how you run your scouting report and how you're doing your help side defense for us anyway. So, but we can't in these types of games. someone's got to pop up off the stat sheet that you weren't expecting and have a big game
Sure.
if you're going to come away with a win, and to come away for us to come away with a road win.
All right, Nigel Russell. I know you guys have been battling the flu bug, not COVID related, but Nigel Russell missed Saturday. Do we know if there's a possibility he could play on Wednesday?
Yeah, I fully expect him to play. Nobody else today, knock on wood.
Sure.
We should have we should have at least 10 players to practice today.
That's good news. And beating SIU, how important would that be? Obviously, you want to win every game, but,
Yeah.
I mean, this is your alma mater. This one's a little different.
Yeah, I tell the guys too, Eric. I don't run away from what SIU means to me. It was a special place. I went there, I played there, coached there for a long time. 6 championships, the 12 years that I was there, 8 postseasons. Met my wife there, had our first child there. So it's like I'm never going to act like it's not a special place. But at the end of the day, I owe SEMO just as much, if not more, for what the opportunity they gave me. So I want to go there, and I want our team to play well. I want to win. I want to beat them. Just like they want to beat us. And so it's like you're never going to be able to take the competitive nature out of somebody. And I know what's across my chest. I know what's in my heart. And we're going to go over there and give them everything we got. And we're trying to win the basketball game.
I'm glad you said it like that, because we've asked Tuke in the past, because he coached there for a long time, and he tries to play it off like it's just another game when we know better. And I know it's not just another game for you.
Yeah, no, and you don't really ever want to play your friends. Obviously, Brian's a close friend. I coached him. You don't really want to play your friends because obviously someone's not going to be feeling great at the end of the game. But again, it's a great game for the region. It's too close. It just makes too much sense. The thing that I like about it, Eric, hopefully he made the decision to continue to play us. Again, because I think, one, there's a respect there for us, and I think our program is heading in the right direction to where it doesn't put a strain on their non-conference schedule. There's like, oh, well, we're doing you a favor to play SEMO. And I hope that our level of program is there to where this is a game that should happen for the region, for their fan base, for our fan base, because, again, I think it makes too much sense.
All right. We'll be at Banterra Center on Wednesday night. Coach, we'll see you there. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Okay. You got it, Eric. Thank you.
That is Coach Brad Korn. That's going to do it here from Wings Etc., the Red Hawks Coaches Show, 7 o'clock tip-off in Carbondale on Wednesday. Thanks to Manny Patterson. Thanks to Rachel Cook, Ethan Chow for their help here behind the scenes. ESPN Radio coming up. So long, everybody, from Wings.